Hello and welcome to the Intel Brief. Today is Thursday, the 11th of June. I am your host Daniel, and today we're going to talk about the IRGC has said that it targeted US military facilities in the Middle East. Only 1 in 10 Europeans sees the US as an ally, and Department of War Secretary Hegseth threatens Cuba during a visit. So firstly, Iran's Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps said it had attacked US military facilities in Bahrain and Kuwait in response to a latest round of US strikes on Iranian territory. They said in a statement that during 2 waves of operations, 18 important targets belonging to the US Army were hit at Al-Assam and Al-Jal'abeid air bases in Kuwait. The Iranian military also said that it attacked another airbase in Bahrain that I probably can't pronounce, much like I can't pronounce anything else in the Middle East. It's unclear what damage has been done in the latest rounds of attack. So what? Basically, at this point, I don't really know what more to say. I've been talking about this basically every day for the past couple of weeks and kind of indicating that this is what was most likely to happen over time. I think it's likely that the ceasefire is basically dead in the water at this stage, as I'm not really sure the US can kind of walk it back from this. There is a statement from Trump this morning. This says something like, if Iran doesn't agree to the ceasefire today, that the US is going to take significant military action, though I think that's highly unlikely that Iran will agree to it today. They've made it clear that they're pretty resilient to significant US military action, so I'm not really sure what more can be done. I think the biggest risk now is that the US just completely withdraws and disengages from the conflict, probably tried to claim some kind of success, and essentially just walks away from the entire situation entirely. But I think the implications for this would be massive. I've laid this out in a long-form video over on the HM Intelligence YouTube channel, so if you want to dig more into it, go have a look over there. But basically, I think it would be a complete shake-up of the Middle East. I think you would see a lot of Gulf countries switch their kind of main allegiance towards China, and it would kind of just be the end of the US kind of influence in the region. I think it would be massive. And next, only 11% of Europeans consider the United States to be an ally, a historic low according to a survey by the European Council of Foreign Relations, released on Wednesday. 6 months ago, 16% of people across 15 countries in Europe said they viewed the US as an ally, while in November 2024, when Donald Trump won the US presidential election, that figure stood at 22%. That is actually still pretty low. The ECFR poll shows that Europeans embrace self-reliance and are clear-eyed about Donald Trump, although they don't expect the relationship to complex entirely under the weight of the current challenges. So what? Firstly, this is almost certainly aimed entirely at the US government and not regular Americans. I think, at a person-to-person basis, basically most people get along most of the time. So I don't think this is like targeting Americans, like people specifically, saying that they're, untrustworthy or bad. I think this is directly aimed at the US government stances. And it's likely a reaction from the US government recent actions and statements, particularly around Greenland. That was a huge one for Europeans, essentially saying that the US wants to annex or take over part of a European country that didn't sit well with many people, you could say. Trump's rhetoric towards NATO, and then also like Trump's rhetoric towards Ukraine, which, as you can imagine, Europe sees as pretty, significant as a factor in their, like, how they see Western unity. And yeah, it's just not ideal for Western unity as a whole. It's pretty sad times, but yeah. And lastly, the US Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth issued a warning to Cuba during a visit to a US military base in Guantanamo Bay on Wednesday. He said it would be unwise of the government of Cuba to try to procure or to get access to the types of weapons that could reach this base or the American homeland. They would be inviting the kind of confrontation not only do they not want, but they could not stand, he said, claiming that no country on earth can match the capabilities of the United States of America. Guantanamo Bay is located in the southern tip of Cuba and is the only US base in another nation that is held with an indefinite lease and against the wishes of the host government. So what? I think this is possibly the next kind of country on Trump's list that he wants to bring on side, let's say, under force, kind of remove the anti-US establishment and bring in a more, US-friendly government, much like we've seen in Venezuela through the removal of Maduro. But I think it's likely only possible if he can do this, if he can sort out the situation in Iran, as we've talked about, extremely difficult and something he can't really do quickly without just walking away, which would be monumentally shit. But yeah, I think it's likely he needs justification for action, which kind of goes back to what Hegseth was saying. There's been reports in the past that have talked about of Cuba getting hold of like long range drones, such as the ones used by Iran, which could be used as justification for the US conducting some kind of preemptive operation against the Cuban military. But I don't think many countries in the world would support this type of US action. I don't think many people in America would either. So yeah, it would be a pretty stark attack if they were to conduct it. But anyway, that's been the Intel Brief. I've been your host, Daniel, and I'll see you again tomorrow. See you.